Let's turn our attention now to the future of Nico Gonzalez at Man City. The midfielder arrived at the Etihad in January from Porto for £50 million at a time when City were having to cope without injured midfielder Rodri. Nico started 11 of his 16 appearances during the second half of last season for City, and then he only played 61 minutes across four matches at the FIFA Club World Cup. That was following the return of Rodri from injury, the
Yeah.
arrival of new signing Tierney Reinders. The likes of Gundogan and new captain Bernardo Silva also preferred over in midfield at that tournament. And there's been sort of reports now emerging suggesting that City could be open to letting Nico Gonzalez leave the club this summer. Um, and I don't know about you, Stephen, but the reports seem to be a bit of a surprise, really, considering that Nico's only spent 6 months at City. Surely an exit's not really on the cards this summer. What are your thoughts on that and Nico's start to life at the Etihad?
I don't believe it personally. I just doesn't seem realistic. I mean, as much as there's a small possibility that Guardiola right now might still prefer the older players, Bernardo and Gundogan and Kovacic, I believe that's possibly true. I just don't think the City's board would sanction Nico Gonzalez being written off £60 million that quickly. I just think they'd go, sorry, Pep, no. And Pep did admit many times that he has to take a backwards sort of step on his view of the transfers because he admitted that last summer he was wrong to tell him not to refresh the squad. It makes no and bear in mind as well, we just come off of the worst season in Guardiola's managerial history, arguably. It is, I think, statistically, and City's worse in a decade. Bear in mind, he's just come off that. He's in no position to go, I'm sorry, no, that £60 million player that I definitely sanctioned, he would have given the nod at least. The one that also has ties to La Masia. Like, he's Guardiola club trained him, and it's a player that City have looked at for a few years. They've got that link. I just don't believe with Kovacic, Bernardo, and Gundogan all likely to not be here in 12 months that Nico Gonzalez is going to be let go right now. It makes absolutely zero sense, and like I think there's also a good chance that Gundogan might leave still. There's still some rumours going to Fenerbahce, and Kovacic is not even back here. Who knows what happens there? And we feel like City have sort of moved on a bit about Kovacic right now because of the injuries over the summer. I think Nico Gonzalez, as a fan, I feel the frustration. A little bit watching this guy come in and be really good. His first game against Newcastle, Guardiola called him a mini Rodri, and that's an incredible amount of praise. There's a good chance that Guardiola, saw some things maybe he didn't like as he adapted to it. Um, that come with experience and come with time. And look, I know they're very different footballers, but I cast my mind back to people like Nathan Ake when he first joined Manchester City, and he only played like 10 games in his first season at City, and he was a reasonably frustrated squad member. A couple of injuries here and there, but it was a couple of years where he was very rotational until eventually, with a bit of patience and experience, he broke into the City side and got worked really hard and so on. And not every player can be that patient, and everyone's different. But I think he'd be mad of Nico Gonzalez to look at the balance of the squad and not think that is clearing up big time. Presuming all those three I've just mentioned leave, and Bernardo, Gundogan, Kovacic in a year, they will. I'm almost certain. Maybe Kovacic, arguably not, but the other two definitely gone. But I'm going to say all three for the argument's sake. That leaves after that Rodri, and we don't know how fit Rodri's going to be for what it's worth either, because Rodri, is he's still look, he's had a setback at Club World Cup, but anyway, assuming he's fine. Rodri, Reinders, and that is it of the deeper line players. You've got Shirky ahead of him, Foden, and so on. But I'm talking about the number sixes and number eights. It's just those two players that are recognised there. So you got Nico Gonzalez. That's it. Then those three in 12 months that'll be available and guaranteed. You can argue Nico Radi could go into that role, but until he does that, I'm not going to count him there anyway. But either way, that's still just the four players there with a vast overhaul ahead of them. So like, I think this reports opportunistic. There might have been some. It's usually these things are based in an element of truth. Like it could be that someone close to him said, "Well, if the right deal, happened." And what I mean by that, it could be. I'm making this up for what it's worth, but it could have been, Chinese whispers where if the right deal close to him happened, i.e., another big club offered a chance to play regularly, maybe think about it. That's a guess, and that turns into he's going to leave. Blah 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 blah. This is how these things work. Someone says something to someone, and it could be extrapolated to mean he's out the door. Pep doesn't like him, and he's gone. And that's not even to say that's happened. I think that I've just made that up. It's probably nonsense, but that could turn into something now. Someone said close to City that this guy said, this is how these things work. So I think it'd be stupid for City to let him go. I think Nico Gonzalez is very much aware that he only signed 6 months ago, literally 6 months ago, and a month for that we haven't even played football. And Guardiola decided to lock in and trust the experienced players as we hunted for Champions League football and ultimately got it. And I think we will see more of him. I think one of Gundogan and Kovacic will leave. I think they will do. I think that leaves City with Bernardo still, Rodri, Reinders, and the deeper role, maybe Kovacic potentially still, but we don't know what his fitness is going to be like, and he hasn't always been the most fit player. Nico Gonzalez seems to not get injured so far, based on the 6 months that I've seen. I'd be amazed if it occasionally doesn't play alongside Rodri when Rodri's fit. I think Guardiola even spoke about him wanting to learn from Rodri as well. There could be that element where he spends a few months training alongside Rodri and then he plays a game and guess what? His position sense is a little bit better. That physicality that he's got, his strong running, comes in really useful alongside Rodri where he can, when you want to lock it in, you've got Rodri, Reinders and Nico in the midfield, which is really powerful, full of control, full of composure. And we will see that at some point. I'd be amazed if you don't see that against a team like Arsenal one day, where Guardiola thinks. To me, Nico Gonzalez is more of Declan Rice than Rodri in terms of that powerful running that he's got. I'd be amazed if you don't see Rodri sit a bit deeper and then Reinders and Nico sort of. That's a physically dominant number free midfield there. We'll see that at some point in the future. And Guardiola might go, I like this. And all of a sudden, Nico Gonzalez is starting the odd game here and there. And we're away to Newcastle, and you want someone to match the power of Joe Linton and Bruno Guimaraes, and also the Nico Gonzalez is quite useful alongside Rodri or Reinders or whatever. I can see it potentially. So I think it'd be very stupid. I think people are getting giddy because we've seen, Phillips and Nunes struggling midfield, and Phillips moved on very quickly, and I think they're putting two and two together and getting five. I just don't believe it personally.